The full contents of the red-black commander deck from Innistrad Crimson Vow have been revealed. We've got powerful vampires, we've got gross artifacts, and we have this fella right here who has an absolutely ridiculous name.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The magic historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. My friends, I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered to look at some more glorious Magic the Gathering cards. This time from the Crimson Vow commander deck called Vampiric Bloodlines. So this is the black-red deck. Now, I did already cover the white-blue cards over in a previous video today. So if you haven't checked that out, I'll leave a link at the end of the video for you and down in the description so you can check that out as well. Because we got two full decks to talk about just in terms of spoilers though. So we're only going to be looking at the cards that are new and not reprints. So let's start out with Captain Silly Name, Timothar, Baron of Bats. And honestly, the card itself is pretty powerful, but I just have to get out of the way that I find it really silly that his name is Timothar, Baron of Bats. Like, it makes me think about some little, like, 6-year-old who, we're going to play D&D, Timothy. What do you want your character's name to be? And little Timothy's like, Timothar? Timothar Baron of Bats? Like, it's a terrible name, let's be real. The Timothar is just too silly for me. So, 2 black and 4 gets you a 4/4 legendary vampire noble. So that combines with the Olivia from the main Crimson Vow set. Who cares about you having vampire nobles out? He's got Ward, discard a card, which means if your opponent wants to target him, they've got to pitch a card, which is really solid. And his other ability is awesome. Whenever another non-token vampire you control dies, you may pay 1 and exile it. If you do, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. It gains, when this creature deals combat damage to a player, sacrifice it, and return the exiled card to the battlefield tapped. That's awesome. It's basically like Timothar snags the souls of dying vampires and infuses them into bats. And if that bat can somehow feast on planeswalker blood, it's so potent it can transform back into its original vampiric form. I really like the flavor concept of this. This card is a win all across the board. I mean, except for the name. The name is too goofy for me, but he does have a very imposing presence and the bats flying around him. But I just picture being called into an audience with him and he's like, there are some who call me Timothar. And it's like, really, man? Come on, bro. You were way more intimidating. Vampires need a name like Dracula or Strahd, not Timothar. What up, Timothar? Anyhow, I'm going to keep going on about it. Let's move on. We got Crossway Troublemakers. What kind of trouble are they making? It's like their posing is so weird. 1 black and 5 for a 5/5 vampire. Attacking vampires you control have Death Touch and Lifelink. And whenever a vampire you control dies, you may pay 2 life if you do draw a card. This guy is a lot to put out. But when he's on the board, all your vampires getting Death Touch and Lifelink, and, oh, did you block them? I lost some vampires. Guess I'm just going to pay life I got from their Lifelink and draw cards to replace them. It feels really good from an ability perspective. The flavor text says, Lady Anjay said no violence at the wedding. She never said anything about the journey there. And you can see in the artwork, they have upended a carriage, and whoever was in that carriage is done like dinner. You can see their hand flopping out the window. And then you've got I'm guessing maybe they're just, I don't know if he stole the nobleman's coat, but he's like, you got the one guy, yay, look at me. You got this other chick who's rock on kind of pose. And then you got the guy in the back who's like, who wants to rub some cocoa butter on my Oko cosplay back here? This artwork, I gotta say. I mean, it shows you what's going on. These are some silly folk indeed. And an alright card. Moving on. We've got Glass Cast Heart. This is a gross artifact on multiple levels. 1 black and 2 for an artifact that says, whenever 1 or more vampires you control attack, create a blood token. 1 black, tap, pay 1 life, create a 1/1 white and black vampire creature token with lifelink. All right, and then 2 black and tap, sacrifice Glass Cast Heart and 13 blood tokens. Each opponent loses 13 life and you gain 13 life. That is a fun ultimate ability to go with it. But I have to say, even without that final ability, this feels like a really solid card. Like every time you swing with your vampires, boom, you get a blood token. And you can just spend 1 life to make a 1/1 token that has lifelink and also counts as a vampire, so it can trigger the first ability. Like, that feels amazing. And then down here, once you get enough blood flowing through the heart, then you can cause it to basically, I don't know, magically shatter in a crazy blood cyclone that just goes to your opponent, starts sucking their life force out and feeding it into you. It's like, blood! That's crazy, man. It's gross that it's literally shaped like a heart. But I mean, it makes sense. Vampires would have this kind of, let's admit it, this is gaudy. This is the kind of gaudy stuff you're going to have for a wedding. But it is also impressive. It's like a sign of wealth and power. So I think this card is gross both from a flavor perspective and also just from an actual gameplay perspective. I think this is a really solid card. And as much as the heart is troubling, overall the artwork's great. Really like it. Moving on. We've got Loreen the Diversion. What a great name. I'm just a diversion. Loreen, the girl who doesn't matter. 1 red and 2 for a 3/3. She partners with Camber the Plunderer. I'm the diversion. I'm the plunderer. All right, so 3/3 first strike. 2 mana, sack an artifact or creature, goad target creature. So you can make it so that anytime you want, you can just go, yo, that's gonna have to attack on your next turn. You know, you're gonna have to swing in with this guy here specifically, right? And it can't attack me. Goad is an interesting ability for commander. Obviously, in a 2-player game, it's just a force to attack. It's not nearly as good. But yeah, so when you cast Loreen, you can go and grab Camber from your deck and put him into your hand as well. I mean, the artwork shows her Mission Impossibling down. She's got this key ring, and that makes me think of the old Ultima games. She's got the torch, I guess, ready to whip it at something. And yeah, I mean, it's perfectly fine artwork. It looks like a dungeon delver. Honestly, it feels almost like you could call her a plunderer, but I guess she's just there to distract people on behalf of Camber. So we've got Camber the Plunderer, the Vampire Rogue. 1 black and 3 for a 3/4. Partner with Loreen the Diversion. So same deal. You can grab Loreen when you cast him. He's got lifelink, and whenever a creature dies, you gain 1 life and create a blood token. So pretty solid overall. A blood token, whenever anybody loses a creature, especially in a commander game, feels pretty potent. The artwork shows Camber here reclining on somebody else's throne. Although, why do you need someone to do a diversion if this is the king? If the king is this long gone, why do you need a diversion to get into his ancient tomb? Also, looking at him with the crown on, he's looking at his reflection in the plate. If they were trying to get across the concept of a young vampire D-bag, they totally nailed it, because he's got that kind of obnoxious, self-loving arrogance that is just the smugness. Oh, Camber! All right, moving on. We've got Olivia's Wrath. 1 black and 4 for an interesting Wrath variant. Each non-vampire creature gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of vampires you control. The flavor text says, these worthless cattle think they can sneak unnoticed into my wedding? Dispose of them. And that's Olivia Voldaren talking, I guess, to the vampire guards. But this is a card that clearly gets very potent. If you can get a bunch of vampires on the board, then you're essentially just going to be able to make way for your vampires across everybody's creatures. And this is the kind of wrath that takes care of indestructible creatures as well, right? Because if you give a creature -X and its toughness hits 0 or less, even if it has indestructible, straight into the graveyard. So pretty solid. The artwork is hilarious, admittedly. You've got the vampires running. These people like, I just wanted to go to the wedding. And it's like, get out of here. You're not good enough to come to Olivia's wedding. It is kind of funny to think that we have Magic cards that are about not being good enough to come to a wedding. Anyhow, moving on. We've got Predator, is that how you say it? Hour. 1 black and 1 for a sorcery. Until end of turn, creatures you control gain menace, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of that player's library face down. You may look at it and play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast that spell. This feels like an ability that moves across a couple of different colors, but it definitely does feel like a black ability. And it's pretty wild that it gives it to all of your creatures. They all also just happen to get menace. So it's like, okay, I'm going to get to pull a bunch of cards off the top of your deck, most likely. And if I have a bunch of mana, things are going to go nuts. And this spell only costs 2 mana, which is great. It leaves more mana open for shenanigans with your opponent's spells. I'm not exactly sure, I guess the idea is just supposed to be the hours when everybody comes out. So it's like, we got werewolves. Oh no, there's geists over there. Oh no, there's giant vampire bats in the sky. It's like, okay, I don't want to be around here right now. No, thank you. The artwork's cool. I like it. It definitely evokes a location that feels pretty dangerous because, the only thing that's alive in the picture is the werewolf and the bats. Everything in this is a threat to you. Even the trees don't really show much of a sign of life. Moving on. We've got Shadowgrange Archfiend. This thing is nuts. 1 black and 6 for an 8/4 demon. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. You gain life equal to the greatest power among creatures sacrificed this way. Now, if that's all the card said, it wouldn't feel that crazy. But when you get down here and see the madness and realize blood tokens are everywhere, so you're going to be guaranteed to do madness with no issues, right? So madness, 1 black and 2, but you also have to pay 8 life. So you discard, basically, when you discard this card, you can pay its madness cost instead of its regular casting cost, and you get to cast it. So if you discard this to a blood token or anything else, you can just pay 3 mana to cast it. And yes, you do have to pay 8 life, but as soon as it hits the board, each of your opponent sacrifices a creature. And whoever had the biggest power, you gain that much life. So even if they have just a 4/4 out as the biggest creature, you have recouped half of the life that you lost when you paid for this thing. And you have an 8/4 demon on the board for 3 mana. That's crazy. This thing is nuts. And in all honesty, looking at the artwork, it doesn't feel like an 8/4, does it? Look at the size of it. It looks very gargoyle-esque standing there atop probably some kind of mausoleum or church building, right? And it looks like he might be holding some kind of stone. No, yeah, it looks like he's got a stone sword. So maybe that's where the extra power is supposed to come from. Is it he's a 4/4 and that huge sword gives him a +4/+0? Because he does not feel like an 8/4 demon. This feels like a 3/3, maybe a 4/4 at best. But very cool card. I like it. Moving on. Arterial Alchemy. I had to slow down because that one's almost a tongue twister for me. 1 red and 2 for an enchantment that says when Arterial Alchemy enters the battlefield, create a blood token for each opponent you have. And blood tokens you control are equipment in addition to their other types. And have equipped creature gets +2/+0 and equipped 2. This is a really cool concept. This is vampiric magic, where some intrepid vampire who was so entranced with blood was like, what can I do with this? What can I make out of this? And they figured out how to form it into weaponry. So you can see a vampire right now in the process of creating this blood blade. It's got a very martial feel to it and is a fun concept overall. And the enchantment doesn't seem too shabby at all. You know what I mean? In a 2-player game, maybe it's not as exciting, but you can generate a ton of blood tokens in a number of different ways. So you can just keep, I've got 50 vampire blood swords. I'm Mr. Bloodfingers. All right, let's move on to the next card. We've got Imposing Grandeur. 1 red and 4 for a sorcery. Each player may discard their hand and draw cards equal to the greatest mana value of a commander they own on the battlefield or in the command zone. So it says in the flavor text, the wedding's lavish decorations paled in comparison to the opulence of its elite guests. I have to admit, this card is underwhelming to me. The artwork just shows some vampire nobles going to a wedding and whatever. It's fine. It's not like it's bad artwork, but it doesn't excite me looking at it. And it's it feels like kind of a janky, weird Wheel of Fortune. Do you know what I mean? And for 5 mana, I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm no commander expert, so maybe this card is better than I'm giving it credit for, and you can let me know in the comments. But out of all the spoilers, I found this one to be just the least exciting. So that's all I have to say about it. Let's move on to another card. Markov Enforcer. Big heavy mace to the face. 2 red and 4 for a 6/6 vampire soldier. When it enters the battlefield or another vampire enters the battlefield under your control, it fights up to 1 target creature an opponent controls. So this Enforcer will just start swinging its mace and going to town on your enemy's creatures. And whenever a creature dealt damage by Markov Enforcer this turn dies, you also get to create a blood token. I love this card. I love this card. This is Thorn Mammoth. Basically, this is a vampire Thorn Mammoth. And I loved Thorn Mammoth. When it rotated out of Standard, I was very unhappy. And I need to get one for my cube now that I think about it. But anyways, this is a red version of it, which costs 1 less mana to put out. But it doesn't have trample like the other one did. Either way, love it. Love this as a concept. Ultimately, I don't know how powerful it would be for, proper use in Commander, because Commander's a crazy format, but I dig it. And the artwork's pretty intense. This is a gigantic vampire, just look at the size of that mace, the strength that will be required to heft that thing, and the door that is behind. This is a gigantic vampire. I love it. Moving on. We've got Midnight Arsonist. I'm just intentionally mispronouncing stuff now to drive some of you crazy. Yes, I know how to say it, but no, I won't. 1 red and 3 for a 3/2 vampire. When Midnight Arsonist enters the battlefield, destroy up to X target artifacts without mana abilities, where X is the number of vampires you control. It's interesting to note that it can't destroy mana ability artifacts like Soul Rings and stuff. But it's all right, even on its own. 4 mana for a 3/2, drop it out, smash an artifact. That's all right. It's not amazing, don't get me wrong, but just by itself, it's okay to get rid of the biggest problem on the board. But if you get a number of vampires out, you just bam, 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 like the token generators and stuff, and you're just like, hey, I got 6 vampires. Let's make a bunch of people unhappy and smash their toys. So, the flavor text says, killing the Slayers was self-preservation. The fire was just for fun. He's just like, I just like seeing stuff burn. What can I say? I like to go out at midnight and start fires. All right, stay away from this guy. It looks pretty intense, actually, set against the flames with the blood running down him. It's like, okay, buddy. And he apparently has not a difficult time at all convincing every other vampire. Yo, let's go break some stuff. And they're like, nah. He's like, come on. And they're like, yo, let's do it, bro. And they all just go nuts. After that, Scion of Opulence. I like the name. 1 red and 2 for a 3/1 vampire noble. Whenever Scion of Opulence or another non-token vampire you control dies, create a treasure token. 1 red, sack 2 artifacts, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. This goes really good with all the token generating cards, right? Just make them treasure tokens and boom, fire them off. Feed them into the Scion. You can also feed them blood tokens as well. Literally, she's drinking the blood. Have another blood token. It's like, great, here, let me feed some magical power into your brain. I don't know how it works, but crush these blood vials, rub them on your head. Think them thoughts, planeswalkers. Sometimes when you break down how these cards work, it gets a little weird. Anyways, not a bad card. Artwork shows a noble reclining with a glass of wine. Fits into the theme. All right, cool. Moving on. We've got Sinister Waltz. Oh, the dangerous dance. 1 red, 1 black, and 3 for a sorcery. Choose 3 target creature cards in your graveyard. Return 2 of them at random to the battlefield and put the other on the bottom of your library. For 1 evening, the dueling bloodlines channel their feuds into elaborate footwork. So it's just like, grab 3 dead guys, pick 1 dead guy, and put them on the bottom of your library. Pick 2 other dead guys, make them come back to life, and then force them to dance. What? What kind of magic is this now? I'm a crazy necromancer. I just like picking 3 people and go, I don't know which 2 of you's gonna dance, but 2 of you's gonna dance, and 1 of you's going away to the bottom of my mind. It's just such a weird concept. Like, who does that? Who's like, I'm foaming at the mouth with craziness here? Who does that? Who says, yeah, I'm going to make corpses dance together? All right, then. And then the artwork shows people dancing. Here you go. Here's the Sinister Waltz. It doesn't look very sinister at all. It just looks like, hey, you want to dance? All right, I'm being magically compelled to dance with you, so I guess we'll do it. The flavor of the card kind of falls apart, but the power level seems interesting. Moving on. We've got a Doom Weaver. That was actually spoiled a number of days ago, but I included it in here for fulfillment purposes since it is a new card. 2 black and 4 for a 1/8 spider horror. It really is a horror too. This thing is horrific. It's got reach, soul bond. That's the part that makes it horrific to me. You literally bind its soul with another creature. Because how soul bond works is whenever you put out another creature, or a soul bonded creature comes out, you can like link them up, right? So you may pair this creature with another unpaired creature when either enters the battlefield. They remain paired for as long as you control both of them. So it doesn't matter if the spider comes out first or the other guy comes out first, you link them up, all right, with a soul bond. Imagine soul bonding with that spider. That's gross. So as long as Doomweaver is paired with another creature, each of those creatures has, when this creature dies, draw cards equal to its power. So it soul bonds with you for the sole purpose of like preying on you when your life ends, right? Like that's so gross and intense and I do not like it. It's got like a giant Black Widow kind of vibe. Almost looks like Bowser, like a Bowser logo for Mario, but I mean that's not the kind of crossover we're seeing. It looks like it's got a villager trapped. Oh, look at that, man. It's dinner time. It's dinner time. Gross. Gross! Now, Mirage Phalanx. Let's move on to a Soulbond card that's not as gross. So, Mirage Phalanx is 2 red and 4 for a 4/4 Soulbond human soldier. As long as Mirage Phalanx is paired with another creature, each of those creatures has, at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that's a copy of this creature, except it has haste and loses Soulbond. Exile it at the end of combat. So, basically, as far as I understand, it's saying that as long as this is paired up with somebody, then you make a copy of each of them and they can swing in each turn. Like, boom, boom. Sure, they get exiled afterwards, but who cares? That's amazing. Like, there's so much you can do with that. Swing with them, sack them before combat ends. Seems all good. And then the artwork shows a Mirage Phalanx. These guys are fake. They're not really there. They're surrounded by that red nimbus, which gives them that sort of... they feel very real. Let's be real. But, I mean, that's also fine because they're out there doing real physical damage. So I guess they don't need to look ethereal. Maybe that's more of a blue thing. But it might also just be that this artwork was meant for something else and just like a boosting, strengthening spell. And then they decided to like repurpose the artwork because that does happen on occasion. And I do enjoy trying to puzzle out whether artwork was specifically created for the card or if it's repurposed artwork that never found an original home. Moving on, my friends, we have Strefin Morer Progenitor. Progenitor, good lord. It's Strefan Morer Progenitor. 1 red, 1 black, and 2. For a 3/2 vampire noble with flying. At the beginning of your end step, create a blood token for each player who lost life this turn. But that's only on your end step. Whenever Strefan attacks, you may sacrifice 2 blood tokens. If you do, you may put a vampire card from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. It gains indestructible until end of turn. I have to admit, that feels like a really strong ability. We have seen a ton of cards that make blood tokens, right? Crimson Vow is loaded down. Like, it's not even that big a set. It's only like 200 and something cards, I think. And it really does transmit the blood token theme very strongly across the set. So good job on that. Sometimes smaller sets can't really get a concept across, but the blood tokens have been made central. So the idea that you can just sack 2 blood tokens, put a vampire card into your hand, tapped and attacking, and by the way, it's also indestructible, just feels solid. I mean, he's only 4 mana to cast. He's got flying, which means it's going to be easier to keep him alive because most of the time, at least for me, I find most of Magic battles happen on the ground. So swinging on in the air and coming in with another vampire that you get to keep, right? That's another key point about this, is the fact that you get to keep the vampire afterwards. In terms of the actual like artwork, it's like, okay, you know what? That dude definitely looks like a vampire. Like if I walked into a room and he was there floating in the air in his like old-timey, real nice garb, you got the big curtains hanging down, the rich high ceilings, and of course the blood leaking down his face, I'd be like, yep, that dude is a vampire. You wouldn't need to be like, I am a vampire. I'd be like, I know, bro. I know. You don't need to tell me. And then he just flies in and smacks you with his cane. And as he's doing it, he just starts throwing a drop of blood from the air. And Vampire comes up and comes running with him. I'm with you, boss. It's a cool card. Anyhow, my friends, that is all of the brand new cards from the Innistrad Crimson Vow Red Black Vampiric Bloodlines deck. If you're interested in the Spirit deck, the white blue one, I did a video on that as well, so I'll leave a link up on the screen for you. A big thank you to all of my patrons for supporting my channel, and I will see you all, my friends, in the next video.